When I finally entered the kitchen, Jamie was already there, preparing waffles in the iron as if he'd been doing it his entire life. He was barefoot, hair damp from the shower, humming softly to himself. He turned when he heard me. "Morning," he said with a warm smile. "Hope it's okay. I thought you deserved breakfast prepared for you." That made me laugh, a short, surprised sound. I could get accustomed to this. He placed a plate before me. Golden waffles topped with maple syrup and sliced strawberries. "Then let me pamper you while I'm here." The way he said it was innocent, but something in his tone lingered, that thread of tension again, subtle but unmistakable. We ate slowly, discussing trivial matters, initially the weather, his upcoming exams, a new movie he wanted to see. But occasionally, I'd notice his eyes on me watching, as if waiting for something, or perhaps hoping I'd speak first. I didn't, not yet. After breakfast, I asked if he wanted to help me organize the basement storage area, something I'd been postponing for months. He agreed immediately. I think we both needed the diversion. We worked side by side for hours, removing containers filled with old holiday ornaments, photographs, forgotten books. At one point, I discovered a dusty shoebox containing letters from my ex-husband, tender, awkward notes from our early marriage. I stared at them for a long moment before gently closing the lid and setting it aside. Jamie noticed. "Was it difficult?" he asked. "Letting go?" "No, being abandoned." That caught me by surprise. I looked at him. He wasn't teasing or judging. He was asking like someone who genuinely wanted to understand. "More difficult than I ever admitted," I said. "But eventually, you stopped searching for what departed. You just learned to live with the space it once occupied." He nodded. "I think I understand that. I don't know who moved first. Perhaps it was me. Perhaps it was him. But suddenly we were standing closer than before, the atmosphere between us denser, heavier. I reached for a blanket on the shelf above us, and my fingers brushed against his. We both froze, suspended in that contact. He looked up at me. "Diane." My name in his voice created something flutter deep within me. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Instead, I stepped back slowly, deliberately, until I sat on the edge of the old wooden chair. The light from the window behind him fell across his face, revealing the uncertainty there, but also the hope. "Sit," I said gently. He did, kneeling before me, as if afraid a single wrong move would shatter whatever this fragile moment had become. "I've been trying to comprehend what this is," I whispered. "And it doesn't make sense, Jamie. It's unexpected. It's strange, but it's also genuine." He nodded, his hands resting on his knees, waiting. "I've spent so many years trying to be who I'm supposed to be," I said. "And for one weekend, I want to stop pretending I don't feel things." There was a silence between us, not awkward, but tender, filled with possibility. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just wanted you to know that being around you feels different. Safe, authentic." That word authentic resonated within my heart. And then softly his hand found mine. Not rushed, not demanding, just connection. And I let it remain there. Didn't say much more that afternoon. We returned to sorting containers, but the energy had transformed. We were careful with each other. Every word, every glance carried new significance. There was something delicate about the day, like a tightrope stretched between two hearts that hadn't expected to meet in the middle. As evening fell, and the rain finally ceased, we sat on the back porch wrapped in blankets, drinking hot chocolate, watching the last clouds drift away. "I leave tomorrow," he said quietly. "I know. Are you okay with that?" I looked at him. "I don't know," I said. "But I know I'll remember this." He smiled. "Me too." And for the first time in years, I felt something approaching completeness. Not because I had found someone to complete me, but because someone had seen me exactly as I was, and still chose to stay for a while, even if just for one weekend. Monday morning arrived like the gentle exhalation after a deep breath, still soft and filled with that unspoken heaviness of farewell. I stood at the kitchen counter pouring the last of the coffee into 2 mugs. Jamie was upstairs finishing packing his bag. The house already felt emptier, though we hadn't even departed yet. The atmosphere between us had changed, not dramatically, but in a quiet, settled way. Something had been communicated, even without many words, and something had been deeply felt in a place I hadn't accessed in years. He descended the stairs, backpack over his shoulder, his sweatshirt sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms. He looked every bit the teenager he was, and yet something in his eyes seemed older. Perhaps because of what we shared, or perhaps just because I was finally seeing him without the filter of what was appropriate or expected. "Your mom's arriving in 15 minutes, I said, sliding a mug toward him. "Thanks," he replied, voice soft. We drank in silence, watching the sunlight stream through the kitchen window. The rain had finally stopped, and the entire garden glistened with that freshly washed radiance. "I'm not sure what to say," Jamie said finally. "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Not today." He looked at me then, not with hesitation or confusion, but with a calm steadiness I wasn't expecting. "I think I'll always remember this weekend." I nodded. Me too. There was a long pause, the kind that doesn't need filling, just honoring. He reached across the counter, his fingers touching mine. One final contact, gentle and intentional. It didn't linger, but it remained with me. I walked him to the door, and we stood there a moment before opening it. He turned to me. "Can I ask you one thing?" "Of course." "Do you regret any of it?" My throat tightened. I considered everything, the meaningful conversations, the emotional connection, that fragile spark of something more, and how for once I had allowed myself to feel without apology. "No," I said. "I don't regret it, but I also recognize it can't be more than what it was." He nodded slowly. "I understand." We embraced a long, silent hug. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't purely familial either. It was something entirely its own. The car arrived, and he walked toward it without looking back. I stood at the door, arms wrapped around myself, and watched as he disappeared down the quiet street. When I returned, inside, the house felt still again. But I wasn't the same woman I had been on Friday. Later that night, I sat on the sofa, the same one we had shared that first evening, and allowed myself to feel the quiet resonance of something I had almost forgotten. The awareness that I was still capable of being moved. That even in the second half of life, unexpected things can surprise you. Not always in ways you anticipate, not always in ways you can explain, but they matter. I don't know if I'll ever see Jamie the same way again, or if we'll ever discuss that weekend. What I do know is that for those few days, I let my heart speak again. I allowed someone to see the woman beneath the years, beneath the routine, beneath the silence. At 58, I've lived a predictable life. I wed in my 20s, raised twin sons, remained in my hometown, and worked as a high school counselor for nearly 25 years. Security was always my priority. To me, love meant stability and comfort, not passion or unpredictability. I appreciated knowing exactly what tomorrow would bring, until one weekend altered everything. Never did. I imagined something like this happening to me. Please learn from my experience. It began with my niece Elena calling unexpectedly. She was in a difficult situation. Her former partner had cancelled his weekend with their son Jamie at the last minute. and she needed to attend an emergency conference out of state. Elena and I weren't particularly close while growing up, but we reconnected over the years, through occasional family gatherings and holiday phone calls. When she asked if Jamie could stay at my place until Monday morning, I agreed without hesitation. My house felt empty anyway, and some company might be nice. Jamie was always courteous and introspective, a type of teenager who blended into the background at family reunions. He was 16, with a lanky frame and thoughtful eyes that suggested he was contemplating more than he expressed. He reminded me somewhat of my younger son's childhood friend, observant, respectful, always watching. When he arrived Friday evening with his backpack slung across one shoulder, he greeted me with a tentative smile. "Hi, Aunt Diane. Thanks for letting me stay here." I returned his smile. "Of course, honey. Make yourself comfortable." I had prepared homemade shepherd's pie, something comforting and familiar. We ate at the dining table, just the two of us. My house has been peaceful for years, since my sons moved away. It's a modest Cape Cod-style home that always carries the subtle scent of cinnamon and aged pine. That evening it felt less empty. We discussed his classes, favorite bands, and briefly about his adjustment since his parents' separation. His voice was gentle, contemplative. Unlike many boys his age, he truly listened. I remember noticing this quality, thinking how rare such attentive presence had become in my life. That evening, I prepared the guest bedroom for him: clean linens, extra blankets, a small basket of essentials I always keep for visitors. He thanked me again with such sincerity, it was disarming. There was something in his expression, like he perceived more than just an older woman doing a favor. I dismissed the thought. I changed into my usual flannel pajamas, nothing special. Just something comfortable, and settled in the living room with a cup of herbal tea. It was nearly 10:30 when I heard a soft knock at the doorway. "Hey," Jamie said, peering in. "Is it okay if I join you for a while? I'm not sleepy yet." "Of course," I replied, gesturing toward the other end of the sofa. "It's nice having company, honestly." He entered slowly, wrapped in a throw blanket like a shawl. He looked younger then, almost childlike, but when he sat down, not far from me, I experienced a strange fluttering sensation in my chest. It made no sense, so I ignored it. We watched a wildlife documentary with slow-moving herds and soothing narration. I barely followed it. I was too conscious of the subtle warmth between us, the quiet breathing, the slight depression in the sofa cushion whenever he shifted position. At one point, my hand rested on the couch between us, and his forearm grazed it briefly, purposefully. I wasn't certain. I glanced at him and found him already looking at me. There was nothing inappropriate in his gaze. No cockiness, no presumption, just this quiet, almost vulnerable openness, as if waiting for me to look away. But I didn't. We maintained that gaze. A moment longer than appropriate. I broke it with a gentle laugh, more to reset the atmosphere than anything else. "Getting tired yet?" I asked. He shrugged slightly. "There's a comfortable bed waiting for you." "Yeah," he said, standing slowly, the blanket sliding from his shoulder. "Thanks again for everything." When he turned to leave, he paused momentarily, before walking out of the room. I remained seated, overwhelmed by unexpected emotions. Guilt, confusion, a peculiar yearning I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't understand what it signified yet, but something had shifted that night. Something unspoken but undeniably real. And I wasn't sure which frightened me more, that he had felt it too, or that I had imagined it entirely. The following morning, I awakened earlier than usual. My thoughts had been restless throughout the night, replaying every moment from the previous evening. Jamie's gaze, that gentle touch of skin, his hesitation as he left the room. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination, a manifestation of loneliness. That quiet emptiness that accumulates after years of living alone, not even realizing how long it's been since someone truly saw you. I secured my robe and walked to the kitchen, starting the coffee maker and retrieving eggs and bread. The house still held the morning chill, and I left the side door slightly ajar to admit the fragrance of rain-dampened earth. Minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. "Morning," Jamie said, voice still husky with sleep. He wore an old t-shirt and flannel pants, hair disheveled. He looked so young, yet something in his expression made him seem older than his years. That observant quality again. "Good morning, dear," I said, trying to sound natural. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," he said, sliding onto the kitchen stool. "Better than I expected to." I placed a plate before him and poured 2 mugs of coffee, one black, one with a splash of milk for myself. We ate quietly initially, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just filled with unspoken thoughts. Then he said something that completely surprised me. "You seemed melancholy last night." I blinked. "Melancholy?" He nodded. "Not obviously sad or anything, just ... solitary." His words affected me more deeply than anticipated. I studied his face, searching for any trace of mockery, but he was entirely sincere. "Well," I said after a pause, "you're not mistaken." I hadn't intended to admit it. Not like that. But it was true, and I was tired of pretending otherwise. He gave me a small, thoughtful nod and didn't pursue it further. Just continued sipping his coffee. The day passed in ordinary activities. He helped me clean the garage, and I taught him how to bake my grandmother's apple cake. We discussed literature, films, even his aspiration to possibly become an architect someday. The age difference between us seemed to diminish slightly under the weight of honest conversation. Later that afternoon, a rainstorm arrived. Dark clouds, distant thunder. I lit several candles and played some soft music, the kind with gentle acoustic guitars and warm vocals. It transformed the house into something more intimate. DREAMIER. Jamie sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, browsing through a family album I'd taken from the bookshelf. One of the older ones from when my boys were young. Before the separation. Before everything changed. "You look genuinely happy here," he said, indicating a photo of me with the boys at a lakeside. "I was," I said quietly. "It was a wonderful day." "You still have that expression sometimes," he said. I looked at him. "What expression?" He glanced up. "The one you had in the photograph. Like something wonderful caught you off guard." My throat tightened. Nobody had said anything like that to me in years. I sat beside him on the carpet, feeling the warmth of the candles, the gentle weight of memories surrounding us. "Jamie," I said, "may I ask you something?" "Sure, last night when we were watching that documentary ... was I imagining things?" He regarded me for a long moment, then slowly shook his head. "No," he said. "You weren't." That silence again, heavy, charged. "But," he added gently, "I wasn't going to mention it. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I whispered. "It was just unexpected. We were sitting close now, too close." But I remained still. So did he. "I don't understand what's happening," I said, my voice low. "I just know that it's been a long time since I've felt seen. And last night, I felt something change." He nodded. "Me too." I looked at him, at the soft traces of boyhood still visible, and the emerging outline of the man he was becoming. And I felt this sharp ache, not exactly desire, but recognition, of connection, of two people who didn't expect to find each other in that moment, but somehow had. I stood slowly. "We should rest tonight. It's been an unusual day." "Yeah," he said. Standing too, his voice soft. Unusual, but kind of special too. As he turned to leave, I reached out briefly and touched his hand. Thank you, I said. He looked at me. For what? For seeing me. He gave a small, almost solemn smile. Anytime. And then he was gone down the hallway. And I remained standing in the flickering candlelight, heart beating in a way I hadn't felt in years. The rain continued the next morning, gentle and persistent. It tapped against the windows like a soft reminder that the world outside continued turning, even though everything within me felt suspended. I stayed in bed longer than usual, gazing at the ceiling, hands resting on my sternum. There was a strange mixture of peace and tension in my body, as if something had been set in motion, and I didn't know how to stop it, or even if I wanted to.